The assessment commander Alara Reeves stood motionless before the observation window of orbital station Artemis, her eyes fixed on the strange object hovering just beyond the defense perimeter. The alien probe, sleek, crystalline, and pulsing, with energy patterns unlike anything human technology could produce, had appeared 3 days ago, maintaining perfect geosynchronous orbit above the North Atlantic. "Still no response to our communications?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Lieutenant Zhao looked up from his console. "Nothing, Commander. It's scanning everything, our communications, defense systems, power grids. We're an open book to whoever sent it." Alara nodded, the muscles in her jaw tightening. Humanity had long prepared for this moment, first contact, but preparation and reality were vastly different beasts. "Keep broadcasting the welcome protocol. All frequencies, all languages." She turned away from the window. "And maintain defense readiness at level 3. Let's be friendly, but not foolish." Next morning, everything changed. The probe's energy signature suddenly multiplied tenfold. Before the station's crew could react, a shimmering portal opened beside it, and through this tear in space emerged a vessel of breathtaking proportions, a massive ship that dwarfed anything humanity had ever constructed in space. Its surface rippled with iridescent patterns that seemed alive, pulsating with purpose. "All stations, alert status," Alara ordered calmly as alarms blared throughout Artemis. "But hold fire unless fired upon. This could still be a peaceful contact." The massive alien ship maintained its position, seemingly studying the much smaller human station. Then, without warning, every screen on Artemis flickered simultaneously. The face that appeared was distinctly non-human. Elongated features, skin that shifted colors like living metal, and 4 pupilless eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. "People of Earth," the alien spoke in perfect, unaccented English. "I am High Admiral Vexus of the Vexuran Confederacy. We have been observing your world for some time. We come in peace, seeking dialogue." Alara stepped forward, straightening her uniform. "I am Commander Alara Reeves of the United Earth Space Command. On behalf of humanity, I welcome you to our system." The alien's color-shifting skin rippled in what might have been amusement. A military greeting. How characteristic of Deathworld species. Before Alara could question this statement, Vexus continued. "We request permission to send a diplomatic delegation to your planet's surface." Within hours, the first official meeting between humanity and an alien civilization was underway at the United Nations headquarters in Geneva. Alara stood behind Earth's hastily assembled diplomatic team, watching as 7 Vexurans entered the chamber. In person, they were even more striking, taller than the tallest humans, moving with fluid grace that suggested their bodies might not contain solid bones as humans understood them. High Admiral Vexus addressed the assembly. "We represent a confederation of 17 spacefaring species spanning what you would call 300 light years. We have been aware of your civilization for approximately 50 of your years, monitoring your development." The UN Secretary General leaned forward. "If I may ask, why have you chosen now to make contact?" "Your species has reached a critical development threshold," Vexus replied. "Your primitive faster-than-light experiments have registered on our monitoring networks. It is Confederacy policy to establish diplomatic relations before emerging species fully enter interstellar space." What followed was a diplomatic dance unlike any in human history. The Vexurans offered technological exchange, trade agreements, and cultural sharing, all carefully limited in scope. They spoke of galactic stability, mutual benefit, and peaceful coexistence within the established order of the Confederacy. But in private meetings with her superiors, Alara expressed her reservations. "They're treating us like children," she told General Hammond in his Pentagon office a week later. "Every technology they offer is carefully neutered. Impressive to us, but nothing that would significantly advance our capabilities. Hammond nodded slowly. Our analysts have noticed the same pattern. They call us a death world species. What do you make of that? It's how they classify us, Ilara explained. I've reviewed the materials they provided. They categorize habitable planets on a scale. Earth is what they call a Class 12 death world, higher gravity than most inhabited worlds, extreme temperature variations, tectonic instability, aggressive biosphere. From their perspective, we evolved in hell. And that concerns them, Hammond concluded. It terrifies them, Ilara corrected. In their evolutionary history, species from harsher worlds tend to be more aggressive, more adaptable, more dangerous. We've given them no cause for concern. Our diplomatic approach has been nothing but peaceful. Ilara's expression darkened. That's what worries me, sir. They're not afraid of what we've done. They're afraid of what we're capable of doing. The Vexuran delegation established a permanent embassy in Geneva, and human scientists were invited to tour one of their smaller vessels. Among these scientists was Dr. Maya Okafor, Earth's leading xenobiologist, who found herself partnered with Xantor, a Vexuran researcher. Unlike the careful diplomats of his species, Xantor showed genuine curiosity about humans. During a research exchange, he expressed his fascination directly to Maya. Your cellular repair mechanisms are extraordinary, he said, examining human tissue samples. Most species we encounter couldn't survive your radiation levels, atmospheric, composition, or pathogen diversity, yet humans not only survive but thrive under conditions that would kill most sentient beings. Maya smiled. We're resilient, I suppose, though from our perspective, we're quite fragile. Xantor's skin shifted to a deep blue, a sign of intense thought. That's what fascinates me. Your bodies are relatively vulnerable. No natural armor, modest muscle density, limited sensory capabilities. Yet you've spread across a world that should have extinguished you. Not through physical adaptation, but through problem solving. Is that unusual among spacefaring species? Most evolve on worlds that nurture them, Xantor explained. Physical adaptation matches environmental pressure over millions of years. But humans, his color shifted again. You don't adapt to your environment. You force your environment to adapt to you. Over the following months, as humanity celebrated this new era of interstellar relations, Ilara and a small team continued monitoring Vexuran activities with cautious attention. The aliens had established research outposts on the Moon and Mars, ostensibly to study the solar system alongside human scientists. They're scanning our military installations again, Lieutenant Zhao reported during one of their secure briefings. And I've detected encrypted transmissions between their embassy and their fleet positioned beyond Jupiter. Our cryptography team can't break their codes, but the pattern suggests strategic communication, not scientific data. Ilara studied the data. They're assessing us as a threat. Based on what? We've done nothing threatening. Based on their preconceptions, Ilara replied. And perhaps their own history. To them, we're an unpredictable variable, a species that evolved in what they consider a nightmare world, now on the verge of interstellar capability. The first overt sign of trouble came 6 months after first contact, when 3 Vexuran diplomats were caught attempting to access classified research at the Quantum Propulsion Laboratory in Australia. The incident was quietly contained, with the Vexurans claiming a cultural misunderstanding about security protocols. Ilara wasn't convinced. They're specifically targeting our propulsion research. They want to know how close we are to true FTL capability. General Hammond sighed heavily. The UN Security Council is divided. Half believe the Vexurans are genuinely interested in peaceful relations, just with understandable security precautions. The other half share your concerns. And what do you believe, sir? Hammond's weathered face hardened. I believe in being prepared for all possibilities. The Mars colony attack came without warning. What the Vexurans didn't know, couldn't have known, was that humans had been preparing for disaster scenarios since they first looked up at the stars. When the colony's main atmospheric processor mysteriously failed, backup systems engaged instantly. When communications were jammed, alternate channels opened through subsurface relays. When Vexuran security forces arrived claiming to offer emergency assistance, they found the colonists ready and waiting. No shots were fired, but the message was clear. The Vexurans had attempted to create a crisis that would place the Mars colony under their protection. From her command center at Artemis Station, Alara watched the situation unfold through secure channels. Evidence of Vexuran sabotage had been meticulously documented by colony security, evidence she now presented to the UN Security Council via encrypted link. This was a calculated first move, she explained to the grim-faced leaders. Create an emergency, offer help, establish control. If it had succeeded, Mars colony would have become dependent on Vexuran life support, giving them a foothold in our system and leverage over Earth. The Secretary General looked troubled. What is their objective, Commander? Containment, Ilara replied without hesitation. The Vexurans see us as potentially dangerous, but still limited to our solar system. They want to ensure we stay that way. A managed threat rather than an unpredictable one. And your recommendation? Ilara took a deep breath. It's time to show them why Deathworld species are so adaptable, not by threatening violence. That would only confirm their fears. Instead, we demonstrate that underestimating humans is the most dangerous mistake they could make. As the Security Council deliberated, Ilara received an unexpected message from Dr. Maya Okafor. The xenobiologist had continued working with Xantor, who had become increasingly troubled by his government's actions. He wants to meet, Maya explained. Off the record. He says there's something we need to know about how the Confederacy really views Earth. The meeting took place in a secure room deep within Artemis Station. Xantor's skin had dulled to a muted gray, a sign of extreme distress among his kind. My government has not been forthcoming, he began without preamble. There is precedent for how the Confederacy handles Deathworld species. 3 times in our history, we have encountered civilizations like yours. Each time, the protocol was the same: containment, limitation, and, if necessary, preemptive measures. Preemptive measures? Ilara repeated flatly. You mean extinction? It has happened once, Xantor admitted, his color darkening further. A species from a Class 11 Deathworld developed rapidly and rejected Confederacy oversight. The conflict that followed caused devastation across multiple systems before they were neutralized. Maya looked horrified. And that's what your government fears from us? What they fear, Xantor clarified, is what my research has led me to understand. Humans are unique even among Deathworld species. Your neural adaptability, your social cooperation despite your competitive instincts, your technological innovation rate, they all exceed predictive models. He produced a small, crystalline device that projected a complex holographic display. This is the standard threat assessment matrix the Confederacy uses for emerging species. Humans register higher than any species ever encountered on adaptive potential. The Vexuran High Command believes that within a century, unrestricted human expansion would fundamentally alter the galactic power balance. Ilara studied the projection carefully. They see us as an existential threat to their dominance. Yes, Xantor confirmed, and they are planning accordingly. As Xantor shared the details of the Confederacy's containment strategy, Ilara's mind was already racing ahead, formulating humanity's response. The Vexurans had assessed humans as dangerous based on their evolutionary background, but they had critically underestimated just how dangerous humans could be when threatened. Thank you for your honesty, she told Xantor as the meeting concluded. You've taken an enormous risk sharing this information. The alien scientist's skin rippled with complex patterns. "I believe in scientific truth, Commander. And the truth is that my government's approach is based on fear, not understanding. They see humans as a problem to be managed. I see a species with extraordinary potential." As Xantor departed, Ilara turned to Maya. "Contact General Hammond. We need to implement Contingency Protocol Omega immediately." "That's our most extreme contingency plan," Maya noted, surprised. "Are you sure?" Ilara's expression was resolute. "The Vexurans have cataloged us as dangerous because we evolved on a harsh world. They've studied our visible technology, our military capabilities, our resource allocation. But they've missed something fundamental about humans." "What's that?" "We're at our most dangerous not when we're showing our strength," Ilara said grimly, "but when we're hiding it." The Reckoning. The Vexuran attack on Mars colony became the pivot point in humanity's relationship with the stars. Within 24 hours of Xantor's revelation, the United Earth Security Council activated emergency protocols that had been theoretical until that moment. Orbital defense platforms that had remained dormant and hidden beneath stealth shielding came online. Quantum communication relays beyond Vexuran detection capabilities connected Earth's military commands into a unified response network. And deep beneath the lunar surface, facilities unknown even to most of Earth's leadership began powering up, systems that defied conventional understanding of physics. High Admiral Vexus requested an emergency meeting with Earth's leadership following the Mars incident. His diplomatic veneer had thinned, revealing the steel beneath. "Your accusations are unfounded," he stated coldly to the assembled UN Security Council. "We responded to an environmental emergency at your Mars facility. If your colonists misinterpreted our intentions, that is regrettable." The Secretary General remained calm. "We have documented evidence of sabotage targeting critical life support systems, sabotage that bears Vexuran energy signatures." "Impossible," Vexus dismissed. "Perhaps your systems malfunctioned and you are seeking to place blame. Or perhaps," Commander Ilara Reeves interrupted as she entered the chamber uninvited, "you underestimated a Deathworld species' capacity for paranoia." All eyes turned to her as she approached the central display. "From the moment your ships entered our system, Admiral, we've been documenting every interaction, analyzing every technology you've shown us, and preparing for the possibility that your intentions might not be as peaceful as claimed." She activated the display, showing detailed schematics of Vexuran technology. For instance, the civilian research vessel currently orbiting Jupiter has weapons capabilities equivalent to 20 nuclear warheads. The cultural exchange modules you installed in our communication networks contain sophisticated surveillance algorithms. And the atmospheric processors you so generously offered for Mars colony included remote override systems tied directly to your command frequencies. Vexus's color shifted rapidly, the Vexuran equivalent of facial expressions cycling through shock, anger, and calculation. "These are serious allegations that I categorically deny." "They're not allegations," Ilara cut in. "They're facts. Facts provided by sources within your own delegation who recognize that your containment strategy for Earth is not only unethical, but potentially catastrophic for both our peoples." The room fell silent as the implications settled over the assembly. Vexus's 4 eyes narrowed to slits. "Commander Reeves," he finally said, his voice lowered to a dangerous register, "you clearly misunderstand the Confederacy's position in galactic affairs. We have stewarded peace across 300 light-years for millennia. When we identify potential threats to that stability, we act accordingly. By sabotaging peaceful colonies, by planning the subjugation of an entire species, by containing a Deathworld species with unprecedented adaptive capabilities before they become a galactic-scale threat," Vexus countered. "Your kind evolved through constant warfare, with your environment, with your planet's other life forms, with each other. Your history is written in blood and conquest. The Confederacy cannot allow such instincts to spread unchecked among the stars. Ilara studied the alien admiral carefully. You're afraid of us. We are realistic about you, he corrected. And we have the technological superiority to ensure you remain within acceptable parameters of development. A subtle signal from General Hammond caught Ilara's eye. The activation sequence for Contingency Omega was complete. What happened next would determine humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. Admiral Vexus, she said, her voice steady. Humanity has extended every diplomatic courtesy to the Vexran Confederacy. We've shared knowledge, welcomed your representatives, and demonstrated peaceful intentions at every turn. In return, you've spied on us, sabotaged our colonies, and now threaten us with technological superiority. She straightened to her full height, which still fell short of the towering Vexaran. You believe you understand what humanity is capable of. You don't, not even close. At her signal, the chamber's display changed to a real-time view of Earth orbit. The image showed the Vexuran flagship, an imposing vessel nearly 2 kilometers long, suddenly surrounded by rippling distortions in space. What is this? Vexus demanded, his composure cracking for the first time. This, Ilara explained calmly, is humanity demonstrating why Deathworld species are so good at surviving. We don't just adapt, we prepare for worst-case scenarios. Always. Around the Vexuran flagship, 12 previously invisible human vessels materialized. Not the primitive spacecraft the Vexurans had observed and catalogued, but advanced ships with configurations unlike anything in the Confederacy database. Each vessel was smaller than the Vexuran flagship, but radiated energy signatures that defied conventional analysis. Impossible, Vexus whispered. Our scans would have detected such vessels. Your scans detected exactly what we allowed them to detect, Ilara replied. Earth has maintained 2 parallel technology tracks for the past 70 years, one public, one classified beyond top secret. What you've been studying is our conventional technology. What you're seeing now is what we developed in case we ever encountered a hostile spacefaring species. On the display, the human vessels maintained their position, taking no aggressive action, but making their presence undeniable. This is but one example, Ilara continued. We have others. Your ships beyond Jupiter are currently being tracked by defense platforms we positioned throughout the solar system decades ago. Your communications are being monitored through quantum entanglement methods your scientists would find interesting. Vexus's color had drained to a pale, sickly hue. This changes nothing. The Confederacy fleet will arrive in approximately 3 days. Ilara finished for him. We know. We've been tracking their approach since they entered the Oort cloud. 17 battlecruisers, if our readings are correct. The Security Council members exchanged alarmed glances. This was news to most of them as well. You see, Admiral, Ilara continued, the irony of your position is that by treating us as a threat based on our evolutionary background, you've created a self-fulfilling prophecy. Humans are indeed dangerous when threatened, not because we're inherently aggressive, but because we're incredibly good at anticipating threats and preparing for them. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Vexus's features. What do you want? The same thing we wanted from the beginning. Peaceful coexistence, but on equal terms, not as a contained species under your supervision. The standoff in Earth orbit became the focus of intense diplomatic negotiations. The Vexuran Confederacy found itself in an unprecedented position, facing a supposedly primitive species that had concealed capabilities beyond Confederate intelligence estimates. As the Confederacy fleet approached the solar system, tensions reached a breaking point. Dr. Maya Okafor and Xantor worked tirelessly behind the scenes, creating a coalition of moderate voices from both species. They presented extensive research, showing that human adaptability, while formidable, was primarily directed toward problem-solving rather than conquest. Our study of human history shows a clear pattern, Xantor explained to the emergency Confederate Council session, transmitted from Earth. When threatened, humans mobilize extraordinary resources and innovation. When engaged peacefully, they direct that same innovative capacity toward mutual advancement. But the Confederate military leadership remained unconvinced. 3 days after the orbital standoff began, the Confederacy fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. The 17 warships dwarfed anything previously seen in Earth space, each capable of devastating planetary bombardment. Supreme Commander Zayath, the fleet's leader, transmitted his ultimatum without preamble. Earth vessels will power down all weapons systems and submit to Confederate authority. Resistance will be met with appropriate force. The human response came not from military channels, but from a previously unknown facility on the far side of the moon. The transmission originated from Dr. Eleanor Chen, director of Project Paradigm, a woman whose existence was not recorded in any public database the Vexurans had accessed. "Supreme Commander," she greeted with remarkable calm, "before you commit your forces to action, I invite you to observe a demonstration." Without further explanation, a small, unassuming probe launched from the lunar facility. It accelerated toward the space between Earth and the Confederate fleet, then stopped. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality itself appeared to bend. The space around the probe distorted visibly, forming what appeared to be a localized gravitational lens. Through this distortion, a glimpse of unfamiliar stars could be seen, a view not of our solar system, but of somewhere else entirely. "What you're witnessing," Dr. Chen explained, "is what we call a spatial fold, a technology we developed 50 years ago but kept hidden, even from most of our own people. It allows us to create traversable connections between points in space-time without traditional faster-than-light travel." The implications stunned the Confederate observers. Such technology had been theorized in Confederate science but never successfully implemented. If humans could create stable spatial folds, they could bypass the entire Confederate defense network, appearing anywhere in Confederate space without warning. "This is but one example of technologies we've developed," Chen continued. "Not for conquest. We've never used this capability offensively, but as insurance against existential threats." Supreme Commander Zayath's response was predictably military. "Activate all weapons systems. Target that device immediately." The Confederate fleet unleashed a barrage of energy weapons toward the human probe. The beams and projectiles crossed the vast distance at near light speed, only to vanish into another spatial fold that appeared directly in their path. "Please don't," Dr. Chen said, her voice still unnervingly calm. "We've redirected your weapons fire to an uninhabited region of space 50 light-years from here. We have no desire for conflict." For the first time in Confederate military history, a species had neutralized their most powerful weapons without apparent effort. The realization sent shockwaves through the fleet's command structure. Back on Earth, High Admiral Vexus watched the confrontation unfold with growing dread. His species had classified humans as dangerous based on their Death World origins, but they had critically underestimated the implications. They had expected aggression, territorial expansion, conventional military threats, the usual patterns of emerging spacefaring species. Instead, they had found something far more challenging, a species that had quietly developed technologies the Confederacy believed impossible, then kept them in reserve, revealing them only when threatened. "You misunderstand our intentions," Commander Alara Reeves told him as they watched the standoff. "We didn't develop these capabilities to conquer or dominate. We developed them because our history taught us to be prepared." "Prepared for what?" Vexus asked. "Extinction-level threats," she replied simply. "Our planet has faced them repeatedly: asteroid impacts, supervolcanoes, climate shifts, our own nuclear weapons. Survival is deeply embedded in our psychology. When we looked to the stars, we hoped for friendship, but prepared for the worst. The diplomatic breakthrough came from an unexpected quarter. The Ascendi, one of the oldest species in the Confederacy and known for their philosophical approach to galactic affairs, requested direct communication with Earth's leadership. Elder Thal of the Ascendi appeared on the view screens, his crystalline form shimmering with ancient wisdom. "We have observed these proceedings with great interest," he began. "Few times in Confederate history has our assessment of an emerging species been so thoroughly upended. After extensive deliberation, the Confederacy proposed a new framework for human relations, not as a managed species, but as a full member of the galactic community, with certain technological oversight mutually agreed upon. The human response, drafted by a coalition of Earth governments, was direct. Humanity welcomes peaceful relations with all spacefaring civilizations, but we cannot accept limitations on our development based on unfounded fears of our nature. We propose instead a mutual defense and non-aggression pact, with technological exchange in non-military domains and joint exploration initiatives." The negotiation process that followed lasted months, during which the Vexuran military maintained its position at the edge of the solar system while diplomatic channels remained active. Throughout this period, Earth revealed no further hidden technologies, but made it clear that what they had shown was merely the beginning of their capabilities. The eventual Seoul Accords redefined how the Confederacy approached relations with emerging species. Humanity would join the galactic community not as a contained threat, but as a full partner, with restrictions on military technology balanced by unprecedented cooperation in science, medicine, and exploration. As the agreement was formalized, Commander Ilara Reeves found herself face-to-face with High Admiral Vexus one final time. "Your species has forced us to reconsider assumptions we've held for millennia," the Vexuran admitted. "The Coalition has reclassified humans from dangerous evolutionary outliers to extinction-level innovators, a designation never before assigned." "I'm not sure that's more comforting from our perspective," Ilara replied with a faint smile. "It's not meant to be comforting. It's meant to be accurate." Vexus's color shifted to a deep, thoughtful blue. "You evolved on a world that should have killed you 1,000 times over. Instead of making you conquerors, it made you problem solvers of unparalleled capability. That is, both terrifying and admirable." 1 year after first contact, the Spatial Fold Transportation Network became the first joint human Confederate project. Using human fold technology combined with Confederate stabilization methods, the network promised to revolutionize interstellar travel across known space. At the inaugural ceremony, Dr. Maya Okafor and Xantor, now the official scientific liaison between Earth and the Confederacy, activated the first permanent fold between Earth and the Confederate capital. "The Vexurans were right about one thing," Maya remarked as they watched representatives from 17 species pass through the fold. "Deathworld species are dangerous." "How so?" Xantor asked. "We don't accept limitations," she explained. "When someone says something is impossible, we take it as a challenge. When faced with extinction, we innovate. When threatened, we reveal just how much we've been holding back." Xantor's skin rippled with what Maya had come to recognize as amused agreement. The Confederacy categorized humans as dangerous based on where you evolved. We failed to consider what that evolution truly created. Not warriors, but survivors. Not conquerors, but problem solvers. In the decades that followed, humanity's influence spread throughout Confederate space, not through military might or territorial expansion, but through ideas, innovation, and a unique perspective shaped by evolving on a world that had tried to kill them at every turn. The Deathworld species that had been feared as a potential threat had instead become the catalyst for a new era of galactic cooperation and discovery. And deep within secure Earth facilities, development continued on technologies that remained hidden. not as weapons of war, but as insurance against the unknown challenges that might one day emerge from the darkness between stars. Because if humanity had learned one lesson from their evolutionary crucible, it was to hope for the best while preparing for the worst. They had been labeled dangerous before. Now they were classified as extinction level, not because they sought to cause extinction, but because they had become masters at preventing it, for themselves and now, perhaps, for all intelligent life in the galaxy. The revelation, 5 years after the signing of the Sol Accords, humanity had integrated into the galactic community with a speed that astonished even the most optimistic Confederate observers. The spatial fold transportation network had expanded to connect 17 major systems, revolutionizing trade, cultural exchange, and scientific collaboration. Human innovation combined with Confederate experience had created a renaissance of technological development across multiple fields. Yet, beneath this golden age of cooperation, deeper currents were stirring. Commander Elara Reeves, now Admiral Reeves of the newly formed Terran Expeditionary Force, stood on the observation deck of the Horizon, Earth's first official diplomatic vessel designed for deep space exploration beyond Confederate borders. The ship represented the pinnacle of hybrid technology, human spatial fold drives integrated with Confederate quantum shielding, creating a vessel unlike any other in known space. Beautiful, isn't she? The voice belonged to Xantor, who had become Earth's most trusted Confederate ally. His coloration had permanently shifted toward the blue-green spectrum that indicated contentment among Vexurans, a physiological change that had raised eyebrows among his own kind. Not just beautiful, Elara replied. She represents something I wasn't sure I'd live to see. Genuine partnership between our peoples. Xantor moved to stand beside her, his height still imposing despite their years of friendship. The Council has approved your expedition beyond the Sagittarius Arm. That's unprecedented access for a species so recently introduced to the Confederacy. They're curious about what we'll find, Elara noted. Or perhaps more accurately, how we'll respond to what we find. The Vexuran scientist's skin rippled slightly, a sign of amusement he had picked up from spending too much time with humans. You're still being studied, Admiral. The difference is now it's with fascination, rather than fear. Their conversation was interrupted by Dr. Maya Okafor, now Director of Xenobiological Studies for the Terran Science Directorate. Her normally composed features showed clear signs of agitation. Admiral, I need to speak with you immediately. Her eyes darted to Xantor. Both of you, actually. Privately. Minutes later, in Elara's secure office, Maya activated a holographic display showing complex data patterns. We've been analyzing the genetic and archaeological records of the Confederacy, provided about extinct species. Specifically, the 3 previous Death World species mentioned in the historical archive. Xantor leaned forward, his interest piqued. The Morrigan, the Ket, and the Draconids. What about them? We've found anomalies. Maya highlighted specific sections of the data. According to Confederate records, the Morrigan were contained through diplomatic pressure and eventually died out due to internal conflicts. The Ket were integrated but remained limited to a single system until a stellar event rendered their homeworld uninhabitable. And the Draconids were neutralized after becoming a threat to Confederate stability, Xantor finished. The only case where military intervention was required. Yes, that's the official record, Maya agreed. But when we cross-referenced the available data against our own analytical models and the fragmented archaeological evidence, we found inconsistencies. Elara's expression darkened. What kind of inconsistencies? Evidence of systematic suppression, Maya said bluntly. The Morrigan didn't die from internal conflicts. They were deliberately played against each other by Confederate intelligence operations. The Ket's stellar event shows patterns consistent with artificial triggering rather than natural occurrence. And the Draconids... She paused, glancing at Xantor. The Vexuran scientist's skin had dulled to an ashen gray. "You believe the Confederacy deliberately eliminated these species?" "We believe," Maya said carefully, "that the Confederacy has been systematically preventing Deathworld species from reaching their full potential for thousands of years, sometimes through containment, sometimes through more direct methods." The implication hung heavy in the air. Earth had narrowly avoided becoming the next victim in this pattern only because they had hidden their true capabilities. "I need to know, Xantor," Ilara said quietly. "Is this true? Did you know?" The Vexuran's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep internal conflict. "I had suspicions, gaps in our historical records that never quite made sense. But nothing concrete until now." His coloration shifted again, darkening further. "If this is true, it goes against everything I believe about what the Confederacy stands for." Ilara studied her friend carefully. "We need to investigate this further, but discreetly. If the Confederate leadership realizes what we've discovered, they would consider it a threat to galactic stability," Xantor finished grimly, "especially coming from humans. The investigation had to proceed in absolute secrecy. Using the Horizon's upcoming expedition as cover, Ilara assembled a small team of Earth's most brilliant scientific and intelligence minds, including Maya and Xantor. Their official mission was to explore beyond Confederate borders. Their actual mission was to visit the former homeworlds of the extinct Deathworld species, gathering evidence that would either confirm or disprove their suspicions. 2 months. Later, the Horizon hovered in orbit around Morig Prime, a world that had once been home to a thriving civilization but now lay abandoned, its cities crumbling monuments to a species that had vanished 5,000 years ago. "Atmospheric composition is breathable," reported Lieutenant Commander Kira Chen, the ship's science officer. "But radiation levels are elevated in certain regions, consistent with the after effects of targeted fusion bombardment, not the civil war described in Confederate records." Ilara nodded grimly. "Prepare an away team. I want boots on the ground within the hour." The surface of Morig Prime told a story very different from official Confederate history. The landing party, led by Ilara herself, found clear evidence of highly advanced technology and equally clear evidence of its deliberate destruction. Buildings hadn't collapsed from neglect, but had been systematically targeted. Data repositories had been thoroughly purged, with only fragments remaining in hardened backup systems buried deep underground. "They were more advanced than the records indicated," Maya observed as she examined a partially intact laboratory complex. "And they were focused on the same thing we were, spatial manipulation technology." Xantor moved through the ruins with growing distress evident in his coloration. "This matches no Civil War pattern I've ever studied. These are precision strikes against research centers, power generation, and data storage. Military targets." As they continued their clandestine investigation across the 3 extinct species' homeworlds, a disturbing pattern emerged. Each civilization had been approaching technological breakthroughs that would have given them independence from Confederate oversight. Each had evolved on a high-gravity, high-radiation world that produced robust, adaptable species with accelerated innovation curves. And each had been neutralized just as they reached the threshold of true interstellar self-sufficiency. "It's systematic," Ilara concluded during a secure briefing aboard the Horizon as they left the Draconid homeworld. "The Confederate leadership has been eliminating potential rivals before they can emerge. Specifically species from death worlds who show the same adaptability and innovation that humans do." "But why?" asked Commander James Okoro, the ship's tactical officer. "The Confederacy spans hundreds of systems. They can't feel threatened by every emerging species." "It's not about physical threat," Maya explained. "It's about paradigm shifts. Deathworld species don't just develop technology, they develop it differently. approaching problems from perspectives that can render existing power structures obsolete. Xantor had been uncharacteristically silent throughout the briefing. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight Ilara had never heard before. "There is a faction within the Confederate leadership," he said slowly, "known as the Preservers. They believe that galactic stability requires controlled evolution, that some adaptations and technologies are too dangerous to be permitted wide distribution." "You never mentioned this group before," Ilara noted, "because until now I believed they were a fringe element with little real influence." His skin had taken on the dull gray of profound distress. "But this evidence suggests they've been guiding Confederate policy toward emerging species for millennia." The implications were staggering. Earth had avoided the fate of previous Death World civilizations only through paranoia and preparation, hiding their most advanced technologies until they were needed. But how many other species had been denied their potential? How many civilizations had been artificially constrained or eliminated because they evolved in harsh conditions that made them too innovative, too adaptable? "We need to take this evidence back to Earth," Ilara decided, "and we need to decide what to do with it." "If we present this publicly," Maya cautioned, "it could shatter the Sol Accords and potentially trigger a conflict we're not ready for." "And if we keep it secret," Commander Okoro countered, "we're complicit in whatever happens to the next Death World species the Confederacy discovers." The decision was rendered moot when the Horizon emerged from spatial fold to find 3 Confederate battlecruisers waiting in the outer reaches of the Sol system. At their center was the Immutable Order, flagship of High Marshal Xilex, the most senior military commander in the Confederacy and a known hardliner regarding Earth's integration. "Admiral Reeves," Xilex's holographic projection appeared on the Horizon's bridge without preamble. "Your vessel has been tracked visiting restricted systems without authorization. You will power down your engines and prepare for boarding." Ilara maintained her composure, though her mind raced through contingency scenarios. "Marshal Xilex, the Horizon is on an authorized exploration mission approved by the Confederate Council. We've visited no restricted systems according to the navigation database provided to us." "Your database is incomplete," Xilex replied coldly. "By Confederate security protocols, the systems you've surveyed are sealed by executive order. The data you've gathered is classified. Your ship will be impounded and your crew detained pending investigation." With a subtle gesture, Ilara activated the ship's secure protocols. Throughout the Horizon, critical data was being transferred to quantum storage devices designed to survive almost any catastrophe, including the ship's destruction if it came to that. "Marshal, I must protest this action," she said, buying time. "As representatives of Earth, we are entitled to due process under the Sol Accords." "The Accords apply to authorized activities," Xilex countered. "Not espionage. You have 30 seconds to comply before we disable your vessel." Xantor stepped forward, his skin shifting to the formal patterns of his diplomatic rank. "Marshal, Xilex, as Confederate liaison to the Terran Expeditionary Force, I must inform you that your actions violate multiple provisions of Confederate law. The systems we visited were not marked restricted in any database accessible to Earth representatives." Xilex's 4 eyes narrowed. "Xantor, your loyalty to your research subjects has been noted with concern by the Council. Step aside. This is a security matter beyond your jurisdiction." In the tense silence that followed, Ilara made a decision that would reshape galactic politics. With a subtle hand signal to her communications officer, she activated a hidden protocol that Earth had developed for exactly this scenario. Throughout Confederate space, quantum-entangled receivers activated simultaneously. On 17 worlds, in thousands of data centers, the evidence the Horizon had collected began to replicate. Undeletable, untraceable, and unstoppable, not just to human settlements, but to every major species in the Confederacy. "You're right about one thing, Marshal," Ilara said calmly. "This is about security. The security of every species that evolves on what you classify as a death world. The security of civilizations that might develop in ways the preservers find threatening. Xylex's hologram flickered as he received urgent communications from across. Confederate space. His expression shifted from cold authority to something approaching alarm. "What have you done?" he demanded. "Created transparency," Ilara replied. "The evidence we've gathered about the Morrigan, the Ket, and the Draconids has just been transmitted to every major world in Confederate space. The truth about how the Confederacy handles Death World species is now public knowledge. The Gambit was dangerous, potentially catastrophic if it triggered a military response from Confederate hardliners. But Ilara had calculated that the Confederacy's own diversity would work against unified action. Many Confederate species prided themselves on ethical governance and scientific integrity. They would not easily accept the systematic suppression of entire civilizations. "You've endangered galactic stability," Xylex said, but his tone had shifted from threatening to cautious. "No," Ilara countered. "We've revealed a threat to galactic diversity. Evolution doesn't follow convenient patterns. Martial, species that develop on harsh worlds bring perspectives that can benefit everyone, if they're allowed to flourish rather than being contained or eliminated." The standoff in the outer Sol system lasted 3 tense days, during which the Confederate Council fell into disarray as the revelations spread. The Preservers faction, exposed after millennia of shadowy influence, found themselves isolated as moderate council members demanded investigations. Elder Thal of the Ascendi once again proved crucial, calling for an emergency session of the full council with Earth representatives present. The ancient crystalline being's influence was such that even Xylex could not refuse. "We stand at a crossroads." Thal's resonant voice filled the council chamber. "For too long, a philosophy of control has guided our approach to emerging species, particularly those from evolutionary backgrounds we found challenging. This philosophy was born of fear, not wisdom. The debate that followed was heated, with the preservers defending their actions as necessary for stability, while reformists argued for a new approach. Throughout, Ilara and her team presented their evidence methodically, allowing the facts to speak for themselves. "The species you feared," she concluded, "might have been your greatest allies. The Morrigan were developing transportation technology that could have revolutionized trade. The Ket had medical advances that might have benefited billions, and the Draconids, their energy manipulation systems might have solved resource problems across Confederate space. Or they might have disrupted the careful balance we've maintained for millennia," countered Xylex. "Death World species evolve through conflict. It shapes their thinking, their approach to problems. They solve today's crisis with little thought for tomorrow's consequences." "Perhaps," Ilara acknowledged. "But consider this. Earth faced its own extinction-level events multiple times. We nearly destroyed ourselves with nuclear weapons. We damaged our climate through industrial development. We've made terrible mistakes." She paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled representatives of 17 spacefaring civilizations. "But each crisis forced us to innovate, to adapt, to overcome. The harsh conditions of our world didn't just make us dangerous, they made us problem solvers. And the greatest problems in this galaxy will require every different perspective, every unique evolutionary approach. In the end, the Council voted to establish an independent commission to investigate the Preservers' actions throughout Confederate history. More importantly, they ratified the Evolutionary Diversity Accords, a new framework that recognized the unique contributions of species from all planetary classifications and explicitly protected their right to develop without interference. As the diplomatic storm began to subside, Ilara found herself once again face-to-face with High Marshal Xylex. The Vexuran military leader's color had shifted to the deep blue of resignation. "You've fundamentally altered the balance of power in the Confederacy," he said quietly. "Thousands of years of careful management, undone in days." or thousands of years of artificial constraint, released in days, Ilara countered. The galaxy won't collapse because different evolutionary perspectives are allowed to flourish. You cannot know that, Xylex insisted. Your species has existed for a mere eye blink of cosmic time. The preservers were guarding against chaos that unfolds over millennia. Perhaps, Ilara acknowledged, or perhaps they were preventing the very adaptations the galaxy will need to face unknown threats. Diversity isn't just a moral good, Marshal, it's a survival strategy. As Xylex departed, Xantor approached, his coloration having returned to the vibrant blue-green that indicated his restored equilibrium. The first survey ships are being prepared, he reported. Joint Confederate Earth missions to identify and potentially restore the remaining Deathworld civilizations that might be recovered. And the new species? Ilara asked. I believe so, the Vexuran scientist replied. The Confederacy has maintained stability for thousands of years, but at a cost we're only now beginning to understand. Perhaps Deathworld species are the galaxy's immune system, challenging comfortable assumptions, forcing adaptation and growth. 6 months later, aboard the newly commissioned exploration vessel Prometheus, Ilara stood on the bridge as they approached Fold Point. Beside her were representatives from 3 Confederate species and, most significantly, a delegation from the Vortix, the first Deathworld species to be contacted under the new protocols. The Vortix were reptilian, evolved on a high radiation world with punishing gravity and atmospheric toxins that would kill most Confederate species in minutes. Their technology had developed along unique lines, focused on biological integration rather than mechanical solutions. Already their medical insights were being studied by Confederate scientists with awe. Course plotted for the Andromas cluster, reported the navigation officer. Fold drive charged and ready. Ilara glanced at the Vortic ambassador, a towering figure whose scaled hide bore the elaborate tattooed records of their people's history. Ready for your first fold jump, Ambassador? The alien's multifaceted eyes gleamed with anticipation. My people have dreamed of the stars since we first crawled from the radiation swamps, Admiral Reeves. We are more than ready. As the Prometheus, I activated its fold drive, tearing a controlled pathway through space-time. Ilara reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Humanity had been classified as dangerous because they evolved on a world that tested them at every turn. That classification had nearly led to their containment or destruction. Instead, it had led to a revelation that the very qualities that made Deathworld species dangerous also made them essential, not just for their technological innovations, but for their perspectives, their approaches to problems, their refusal to accept limitations. The Confederacy had once labeled them hostile, then classified them as an extinction-level threat. Now they understood that the real threat was homogeneity, the belief that the galaxy could be neatly ordered according to a single vision of stability. As the Prometheus emerged from its fold into unexplored space, Ilara gave the order to begin scanning the nearby systems. Somewhere out there were worlds like Earth, harsh, challenging crucibles that forged civilizations in the fire of adversity. Worlds that produced species who looked at the impossible and saw only problems waiting to be solved. And now, for the first time in Confederate history, these worlds would be approached not with fear but with anticipation, not as threats to be contained, but as perspectives to be welcomed. The Deathworld species would take their rightful place among the stars, not despite their origins, but because of them, and the galaxy would never be the same again.